Conference Gab
Yeah.
gossip.
So here we
Yes,
are. We're now live with the Rare Evo Rare Network podcast, episode 12. Super excited for this one. We've got OrcFax and Peter Van Garderen with us today. So excited to have you on the podcast, Peter, talking OrcFax. You guys were at Rare Evo. It was an amazing booth. And you guys are doing your mainnet launch this past week. So really wanted to dive in and let everybody know what you've been up to. So how's it going, Peter?
it's going great. We've been busy, but in a good way. And yeah, like you mentioned, we finally officially launched our ADA USD feed on Cardano mainnet on Monday. So we're very excited about that. It's a big milestone for our project, making that switch from testnet. And now onward and upwards, we've got other products in the pipeline. We still have a lot of work to do with some other stages of the project in the network, including an incentivized testnet. So hopefully we get a chance to talk about those things later. But yeah, we're all very busy and scrambling, and we had a great time at Rare Evo. That was an awesome event. Really good time for us to finally get out of R&D mode and stealth mode and stick our head out to the community and say, here we are, we're doing something important. And we had some really great conversations with developers that came to our booth and that are interested in decentralized Oracle feeds. So you guys gave us the perfect platform at the right time for us. And then now we're looking forward to Cardano Summit as well and hanging out there.
We appreciate that, Peter, so much. It's always good to hear good things about Rare Evo, and we're ready to do it again. I want to, before we dive too deep into the technical and what OrcFax is, what is your background? Where'd you grow up? How'd you get into blockchain? Kind of what's your education? What brought you down this path? Who is Peter?
Who's Peter? Well, you pronounced my name very well. In Dutch, it's Van Garderen. I was born in the Netherlands. As a child, I moved here where I am now in Vancouver, Canada. That's where I'm based, on the west coast of North America. And I myself, I went to graduate school to get a degree in archival science. So I worked in this kind of interesting community of archivists. And archivists are like librarians, but we preserve collections of historical documents, unique documents, records, business records, government records, personal records. And so we've been around for centuries performing that job. And as society moved to all of our documents and information became digital, archivists have also had to transition and learn how to manage digital collections of archival documents and records and so forth. So over the last 20 years, there's been a subgenre of archivists working on this problem, digital archivists like myself. We call it digital preservation. It's become its own area of study and research and development around how do we keep information usable, findable, accessible, but also authentic over generations of technology. If we create a record today and it needs to be accessible on a computing platform 10 or 20 years from now, it's very likely that document or data have been reformatted, migrated, copied, and so forth, right? How can you still prove that the document is in the form of the authentic original, that this record, this information can be trusted? Those are all very, existential, but large philosophical questions that we pose in archival science, but also work our way towards very practical applied techniques and software and so forth. So I've built an expertise in this area. I've consulted with many governments and extra governmental institutions over the last 20 years. I've developed the two most widely deployed open source software platforms that are being used out there by galleries, libraries, archives, museums, governments, archives, your state archives, federal archives, provincial archives, local municipal archives, city archives. Thousands of them are using the software that I wrote to manage their archival collections, the digital archival collections. And so, yeah, I've developed a bit of expertise in that field. One of my staff very early on introduced me to Bitcoin, very early days. They were mining Bitcoin, and one of my systems developers. And he was very persistent with me, and finally the light went on. And I was like, wow, this is actually something really important. This idea of like a decentralized currency. As far as moving away from fiat type currency and all the problems it had. So it spoke to my libertarian ideals, but also my tech kind of ideals. I was very interested in the cryptography side of things. There's a lot of crossover with the digital archiving space. This idea of how do you keep information authentic? And so the blockchain talks a lot about authenticity and trustlessness. And we've seen lots of applications where people use blockchain notarization and that kind of function where you do a glorified timestamp and you put a hash of a document on the blockchain. That's all very useful stuff. And that's new features and functionality that blockchain and the crypto space brought. So I was approached it as a digital archivist. I looked at what tools can I use and integrate into my other platforms. I also looked at it as an investor. I became very interested in cryptocurrency itself, and as a founder, as an entrepreneur, as a kind of, I guess I like to tinker. So I've built a lot of solutions and platforms over my career. So I started doing little R&D projects, and as an archivist, the Oracle problem really spoke to me. So that really stuck with me. So, I watched the evolution of Bitcoin into Ethereum and all the other L1s that have come along over time, and did actually find my way into Cardano at some point. I actually saw Charles speak at an Ethereum Classic conference here in Vancouver. He was at the closing keynote. And I was like, whoa, who's this guy? What is he talking about? What's this Cardano thing? And within 2 days, I moved all my Ethereum holdings over to Cardano ADA, and that was 2 years ago, and the rest is history. And so along the way, I ended up, getting really intrigued by the Oracle problem. So as an archivist, that really speaks to me because it comes back to this idea of authenticity. So blockchains are really good at like trustlessness within its own network. Like you can trust what the nodes are saying because they're all verifying, validating, and according to cryptographic proofs. But those, now that we put smart contracts on top of that, this business logic that's going to execute things deterministically, trustlessly, but it's reliant on these trusted feeds of data coming in to trigger business logic smart contracts on chain. For example, a price change in ADA to USD might trigger a stop loss order on a DEX, right? Now, can you trust that information? Where is that information coming from? That's what we call the Oracle problem. Like, how can we take real world data that's exists outside the blockchain network, introduce it into the blockchain network, and still maintain the trustlessness of the blockchain? And this is a kind of a bit of a dirty secret in the DeFi space, is that most projects are using their own internal oracles as far as taking data from the outside and introducing it to their own protocols, rather than using a decentralized Oracle service like OrcFax. Now, to be fair, in the Cardano space, there haven't been a lot of options like there have been outside the Cardano space. So Charlie 3 is the very first Oracle service in the Cardano space, and now OrcFax is as well. But other L1s have more mature Oracle solutions that have been integrated by their DeFi protocols. The most common one people know is Chainlink in the Ethereum and EVM space. But in Cardano, we've been a little bit slow, but at the same time, there's a huge need to solve this problem if we're going to maintain the promise of this blockchain technology. And this comes back, so this is a long segue here, but comes back to my libertarian ideals, because I'm not just interested in blockchain for the technology and for the gee whiz, look at this. I very much decentralization very much speaks to my own my own political ideals. And I'm the father of 3 teenagers, and I'm very concerned about what kind of world I'm leaving them. And I see like decentralization as a promising movement as a counterweight to the centralization of power and governance in industry and business and elsewhere. That to me is at the root of many societal problems. Like we're picking away at a lot of symptoms, but if you go all the way down to the roots, I think it's a systemic one where we centralize power in the hands of the few. And I think, so that argument of the 99% versus the 1%, I think decentralization technology, including blockchain technology, gives us a new tool that we haven't had before. I put it on par with like TCP/IP, how the internet changed our lives, how GSM, how mobile phones changed our lives. Blockchain technology, to me, solving the Byzantine generals' consensus problem was a fundamental IT breakthrough that we haven't yet fully reaped the rewards from. Now we're in the danger of throwing the baby out with the bathwater because of all the shysterism and all the negative press we've gotten, and around all the issues and fraud and all these other kind of hyperbole and all these things, all the unmet promise of blockchain. There's a danger we throw away that potential. And that's why I'm very motivated, as somebody with my background and expertise in record keeping, to introduce it to this space, so that we can improve upon the actual plumbing, the infrastructure of blockchain infrastructure, to make sure that it meets its promise to potentially, change a lot of the way society runs how we manage resources, how we share resources, how we govern ourselves. And so I've just, as an archivist, saying that's where I can help. Like, there's lots going on in blockchain. There's so many interesting technology problems to solve. But given my own background and expertise as an archivist, I think solving the Oracle problem was something that I was felt very motivated to do as kind of like my contribution to the space. So and then I was fortunate enough to pitch a Project Catalyst proposal for OrcFax. It got funded. It got the work off the ground. And since then, I've built a team. We've done other kinds of fundraising, ISPO, token launch on Wing Riders last month. So now we're up and running and funded. And here we are. So that's a long way of telling you how I got here today.
It's amazing that your background plays so much into what you're doing. You really are an expert in the field and able to apply that history and that knowledge of your expertise as an archivalist to what you're doing at OrcFax. And I think that's really important, because we see a lot of pop-up projects out here on all chains with people with dreams, but they might not have the background or the expertise to actually build what they want to build. So to me, that's really important and awesome to hear. And I kind of I think that's kind of a really interesting background of like how things get recorded and how we know they're unique. Like at one point you mentioned like a notary, and the notary process and things. How do you see things getting put on the blockchain? Like how does data get loaded onto the blockchain and we know it's correct? Is that something that AI and machine learning is going to do in the future? Do we trust humans? Like how does that information get on the blockchain currently, and how do you see it in the future?
Yeah, there's actually multiple questions in that. I'll try to start simple. Like, the blockchains themselves, including Cardano, have limited transaction space. Like Ethereum, Bitcoin, like we have 16 kilobytes per transaction space. So if we can't stuff them full of PDFs and MP4s and MP3s, when people say put it on the blockchain, put health records on the blockchain, put your mom on the blockchain, I don't care, everything on the blockchain, right? And people assume that documents and media files are inside the Cardano blockchain. No, they're not, because it would grind to a halt. It doesn't work that way. So they're highly tuned to have the most efficient use of like binary space per block, right? So that's never going away. So what we've been doing instead, what people have been offering solutions around using blockchain to notarize documents, that kind of thing, what they do is they'll take a document, they'll create a hash of it, they'll use a hashing function, which is like a unique digital fingerprint of that document that only that binary string can produce. So if you have a PDF document and you feed it through a hashing function, you will get a hash signature. And if you make one pixel change in that PDF, it will produce another hash signature. So this is what I was referring to earlier. That so you can prove that this unique digital object, you have the hash for it. And then if you take that hash, which can be limited in length, right? Like it can be X number of hexadecimal characters, and you put that in a transaction datum. So Cardano allows us to not just move money around, it allows us to actually embed datum inside transactions. So data that you can read in Cardano's case, it's called CBOR. It's like a concise binary object serialization format, and that gets put into the blockchain. And so, what the blockchain does is allows us to prove that a certain block exists in a period of time. It's what the cool thing about it, the trustlessness of blockchain, is that once that datum is in a transaction and the transaction has been produced in the blockchain, there's a very, very strong guarantees that hash existed at that point in time when that block was minted. So that gives us a timestamp. It says that this hash for this document existed at this point in time, and I can take that hash, and I'm looking at the document now 20 years from now. If I can generate the same hash from it, then I can check back at the blockchain, and I can say now I've got the same document that existed 20 years ago. That was a very long description, right? And people gloss over that. And the services that have been provided to do that, in my opinion, have gotten less and less effective. They started bundling documents together and creating giant Merkle trees of hash signatures that then go into a transaction, to the point where you're now, again, trusting a service provider to unbundle all that for you and tell you, yes, the document existed. And we're back to like trusted third parties. So like, to me, yeah, go ahead.
What are people like in your traditional work, I guess, because I'm interested, like now that you say all this, in your normal work as an archivist, like where would things slip up in trying to archive things? Like in my mind, I'm imagining like trying to take a cassette tape to a CD and then digitizing a CD after it's been scratched and stuff.
Yeah, that's yet another whole area of expertise we call just simply digitization. So taking stuff from analog format, whether that's audio cassettes or paper or what have you, right? And converting it to some kind of like common ubiquitous digital format so that ideally it can be put in a digital archive collection, hopefully be kept accessible and reusable, and then monitor that format over time. But the key thing is that the archives actually bring beyond the actual files themselves or the content is the context around it. And that's what archivists have been doing that we aren't doing properly in the blockchain world. So we're still asking people, trust me, we create this hash, did a bunch of hashes, we put it in the blockchain, rather than allowing people to trust but verify, right? And that's a very simple principle in archival science, is capture reliable metadata, like data about what's going on, about the context of the creation and reuse of these records, and put those into audit packages, like metadata surrounding the archival collection. And that allows users of the data to then evaluate whether they consider the content to be authentic or accurate or not. So, and that's the key thing we're introducing in OrcFax that's I consider to be missing in the Web3 space right now, is adding this kind of like record keeping archival context to the data that's being generated, used in like hundreds of millions of dollars of DeFi transactions, right? Like there's not a lot of traceability around what outside information came in to trigger all these like very large, expensive transactions. And that's, if anything, that's the key thing that OrcFax is bringing to the picture that's different, and that's kind of, you know, mirrors my background as an archivist, is how, and again, I treat the Cardano Oracle as a record keeping system. I see it all as an archiving system that happens to have a publish function in the middle where we publish to our blockchain. But there's a whole series, there's a whole workflow before that where we're collecting data, we're validating it, we're processing it, we're creating good contextual metadata, we're putting it in reusable archival packages, and then we take that data and publish it on chain and move that archival audit package, in this case, to a decentralized archival storage network where it's permissionlessly available for auditing and research. And then to go one step further, we added an explorer on top of that, so you can use your own gateways to go look at. We're using the Arweave storage network, which is similar to IPFS. So you can use an Arweave gateway to get the archival packages, and don't have to trust us. You can look at it yourself. You can see all the data, how it was collected and eventually published on chain in Cardano. Or you can use our handy dandy explorer, which we're going to use as we're adding more data feeds and data types. Will provide a really interesting, not just an explorer, but actually like an explorer on top of a data lake of verified fact statements. And we think that is actually a secondary value of our platform that's going to be very interesting. A bit more on the long-term roadmap. We have to get DeFi price feeds right first, but that's where we're going with all this.
That is really cool. And like, so the people watching and everybody out there, to sum it up, it seems like, you know, the difference between yourself and some of the other oracles out there, like a Chainlink or a Charlie 3, is that you're including a lot more metadata or like data around the document that kind of gives somebody a clearer picture of what was happening around the time that document or that information was submitted to the blockchain. Can you kind of describe the difference probably better than I can between yourself and the competition?
Yeah, I think, well, that first and foremost, the fact that we're capturing all this contextual metadata around how we've collected the data. It starts very simple. We're collecting price feed data, right? But we anticipate that the same structure and workflow and process and metadata will apply to more complex data feeds as we add those over time. But to start with, as a good example, then, like, again, Oracle reports on things happening in the real world. Okay, what's the real world? Well, that we can get very philosophical and religious about that. But if you just keep it simple for a minute and think of the theory of relativity, it's 3 dimensions of space, 1 dimension of time. It's a 4-dimensional grid. When anything happens in that 4-dimensional grid, it's an event. So, and that's what oracles report on events. So, and if you think about, people think of ADUSD price feed as like as a static thing, but what it really actually is there's people buying and selling ADA for USD right now as we speak at Binance, at Kraken, at KuCoin, and those centralized exchanges have their own ADA to USD order book, and they're reporting the mean average of that sale every few seconds, and so, or even milliseconds in some cases. So so there's a real world event. There's real world events out there, which is real people buying and selling ADA for USD that derives a mean average price on one centralized exchange. So what we're doing is we're looking at 3 different centralized exchanges at the same time, each with their own order book. We're using 5 collector nodes geographically dispersed around the world that all 5 look at the same 3 exchanges at the same time, pull that data in through their APIs. Then we reformat it so we can all look at it. So we're comparing apples to apples. Then we validate and see, is everybody seeing the same thing? If there's any anomalies or outliers, then we immediately raises flags, and the data may not get published because there may be issues around the authenticity, accuracy of that information. Quite often it's simply network errors where the server in Australia is a little bit slower than the server in Singapore, let's say, right? And we have to account for that as well. But it's what it is we're, again, I think we're scoping ourselves with ADUSD as a really good scope use case example for this problem. But we call this triangulation of source data. And we think it's going to apply to every kind of real world event that we're gathering data for. And so this is the other thing where we're trying to differentiate ourselves with other Oracle providers, is that we have this very strict triangulation policy, so data triangulation policy. So if we can't triangulate the source data, get it from 3 independent sources, then we won't consider that for an OrcFax feed. And there's lots of interesting strategies around that. So, but this kind of like decentralized data gathering is another feature that we think that we're adding to the puzzle. Right now, we're using, at this very first stage of a mainnet launch, we're using our own 5 collector nodes that are run by the OrcFax project. So we're calling this the federated stage, where we're doing our own federated network. And then the transition will become to fully decentralized validator pools run by independent validator pool operators, just like SPO operators exist in the Cardano space. They will be running their own OrcFax validator node, getting rewarded for that, doing that function in fact token. And they will each be running these collector nodes. So we anticipate one day there'll be hundreds, if not ideally thousands, of collector nodes all going and grabbing data at the same time and coming back into our validator pool, comparing the results, and then posting that on chain. And that entire process of going out collecting, including the original HTTP API request response from the centralized exchanges, are all captured in our archival package autologs. And that's all stuff you can verify on chain through the Arweave decentralized storage network chain, and through the blockchains, the hashes that we put in the blockchain transactions, the datum, could all be traced back to that original data collection. So again, if you're a user of a dApp or a protocol, and you call into question, a certain action that was taken on the protocol or platform that involved data coming from the outside world, you can go back and verify whether there was some kind of anomaly, like whether there was foul play or anything like that. We at least give that a capability to audit, and we got a lot of, I think, extra value added checks and balances in place at the data gathering place to make sure that never actually happens. And I think those are some. I think we are improving upon what I would call Chainlink a first generation Oracle. Don't get me wrong, they're a big fish. They're a very well-established organization. They've got really great tech. But I do think we've had the opportunity now to take a look at those and think about where the pain points are for the Oracle problem and improve upon those. And again, I like to think we've done that with OrcFax.
I love that. And just like one question on my end that piques my interest there, will like Rare Pool be able to be some of those like source nodes and things like that, something that might be able to help out people running, SPOs on Cardano? Is that a possibility?
Yeah, and we're actually targeting an even less technical audience than SPO operators. I mean, to start with, to participate in our incentivized testnet, which we are running over 6 months from November to May, we do expect for those people participating in the early rounds to have SPO type skill sets, like where you're comfortable being a Linux sysadmin, you can install stuff from a CLI. But our end goal is, at the end of that, is to have these validator node executables that are very simple to download and install. We even envision at some point creating pre-packaged hardware devices where you simply can order an OrcFax node hardware device, have it preload itself with certified executables. You plug in your Ethernet cord, you add your stake to it, and you become a validator in our network. Because our network, the value of our data will increase the wider we can create, the larger validator node network we can create. If we say there's thousands of nodes now around the world, in continents all around the world, collecting and validating data, that's going to add to the authenticity and accuracy checks for that data, the trustworthiness of it. And trustworthy and trustless are like two sides of the same coin, right? You can say something's trustless, that means you trust the technology behind it or the design behind it, right? There's still trust involved. Yeah. So I think we're trying to create a very trustworthy solution to support trustless applications.
That makes a lot of sense. And how long have you been working on OrcFax? How big is the team?
Currently, there's 8 people in the team. We are looking to do a few more hires in the next month. We're keeping the team relatively small like this, and it goes back to my background as a free open source software developer in the public domain space, where it's not easy to make money, and so you have to really watch your pennies. So I think as a project, we're very good at getting the most out of the funding that we do have, and that even feeds into our technology design, because OrcFax as an Oracle platform can't be sustainable if it costs too much to run, right? So we've spent a long time looking at Cardano itself, the EUXO model. So we have, your question was how long? It's been about 1.5 years. The Catalyst funding did a first phase where we studied the Oracle problem, looked particularly like how can you do oracles on in the EUTXO model, not a global state chain like EVMs. That was a problem. We had to put the research on hold until Vassal came out and introduced reference inputs. And now our solution is very much based around that capability. We've actually open sourced that whole solution. We worked together with the team at MLabs to spec out, how are we going to do an Oracle post Vassal on Cardano. And we think we've developed a very elegant, secure model that minimizes the amount of transactions that are required and thereby reduces the cost per publishing event. And so, because the long-term goal is for OrcFax to transition fully to a fully decentralized model, where not just the network data collecting is fully decentralized in a validator pool network, but the network itself is being run through a decentralized autonomous organization that's in charge of governance decisions like, should we add new feeds? Should we retire new feeds? Should we hire these Yahoos in Canada to keep running the network? Or should we hire another contractor to develop feature X? All of that kind of network governance decision-making will transition to the OrcFax DAO at some point. And in order for that DAO to be sustainable, again, it has to reduce cost. The cost of gathering data, publishing it has to be as low as possible. And I think that's another feature that another design feature that we've spent a lot of time looking at, ensuring that we keep those costs to a minimum. So again, we think that's another advantage that OrcFax is bringing to the picture. And again, other than Charlie 3, there are no other Cardano EUTXO specific oracles. So there's a lot of room for growth here, and for now for us to start knocking on doors of other DeFi protocols and to say, hey, wouldn't you like to use a decentralized oracle feed instead of your own oracle feed that you've got in the back end you're not telling anybody else about, right? So we do. Yeah, there's gonna. I think it's up to us as a community as well to demand better and more. And I think that's why that's one of the reasons I'm in the Cardano space. There is kind of this focus on like technology, engineering excellence, and always shooting for the best possible solutions and the most. Again, I think we can call ourselves the most decentralized L1 in the world right now, given our SBO model, right? And so that's one of several reasons why I'm building on Cardano, but also because I think we take this kind of thing seriously. And so it's time for us as a community to also take our decentralization more seriously and have a closer look under the hood at like how our protocols and platforms are getting the data. And again, to be fair, there wasn't options out there yet, but now there is. So it's time for DeFi protocol users to start asking those questions and saying, hey, how are we getting our external data? How reliable is it? How does it compare to what OrcFax is doing? Could we integrate an OrcFax feed? Do we want to do that? That's all the kind of discussion we hope to start engendering in the community over the next few months.
I love that. And like you touched on, that was going to be a little bit of my next question, is like, what made you choose Cardano over an EVM and things like that? And you touched on a little bit of that, but then I guess like under the hood wise, you kind of barely touched on that. Like, what's the difference between the global state and the EUTXO model that really got you intrigued to come over here?
Well, again, security first and foremost. I think again, Charles himself has spoken about this quite a bit, almost to the point where it's a broken record, right? All the hacks you see on EVM chains like weekly, and almost all of them can be ascribed to the fact that it's maintaining global state. So if you can attack global state, then you've attacked the entire chain. Now that's really made really difficult in a UTXO model because it's all dispersed over it's dispersed out over the tree and leaves of branches of these millions of like UTXOs that you can't control all at once. And that really is a brilliance. Like just that alone gives a real strong sense of decentralized security to the Cardano blockchain, as opposed to again, global state-based chains. And again, that's one of those dirty little secrets I think in the DeFi space that people don't talk about enough. And that's one of the major reasons that I chose to build on Cardano. I actually wrote a blog post because people kept asking me this, like 30 reasons why I'm developing on Cardano in 2023. So if we can post a link to that later. It's a Medium post. So
yes.
Yeah, it was after the Masari finally gave us a really clean, good analysis. And so based on that report, I was like, hey, this is a fantastic report and a very trusted source in the Web3 space. And it just really validated what I've been thinking and seeing in the Cardano space all along anyway. But yeah, that article goes into several reasons why I think, why EUTXO is more secure and stable. But I also the Cardano blockchain itself with its stake pool model, and it's like it's a working, functioning proof of stake that's never been stopped, that's never been hacked, that's never that pays out to its stakers every 5 days loyally over the last 2+ years, right? So it just, as an engineer, it's just the right place for us to be. It's a good fit. And I do think that once the bull market kicks in again, I think Cardano is a sleeping giant in the crypto space, and we want to be the #1 oracle on the #1 sleeping giant L1 when that bull market kicks in.
Love that. And I want to bring up the OrcFax website here as we kind of dive in to the FACT token and what you guys are building and what's going on. Tell us when the FACT token went live and kind of how that's used within the Oracle.
Cool. Yeah. So the very first time there was access to the FACT token was when we offered an ISPO, initial stake pool offering, which is a very common fundraising mechanism in the Cardano space. And that was very popular, fully ascribed within several epochs. And those token holders started receiving their first vested drop about 3 weeks ago, September 16th. That they're vested over 6 months. And then we introduced the token to DEX markets via the Wing Riders Launchpad in late September, my bad. Wait, I don't, so dates are all blur right now. That was about 3-4 weeks ago. Yeah, we've seen trading of the token since then on Wing Riders, a pool on Wing Riders, a pool on MinSwap, there's a pool on Sunday Swap, and quite a lot of activity around the token. The token itself is a utility token, meaning that it has a function within the network. That's the reason it exists. The reason it exists is that we have a on-demand business model in place. So right now, our Oracle feeds are being produced at a 1-hour heartbeat for free. We're subsidizing that cost. And also, if there's a 1% deviation in price, that price will also get published immediately. So there's a regular heartbeat. We're subsidizing that cost. There will come a time when products and protocols will want on-demand requests for an Oracle feed, and that they will pay for that in the FACT token, either holding the FACT token or using an ADA to FACT conversion service from our platform. So that's the first utility, is simply like if there is a feed in your protocol that wants access to that feed right now in the next block, you pay for that. And the advantage you get for paying for that is that you get to what you will get is a signed transaction that contains an OrcFax security authentication token to prove that it came from an OrcFax certified node. And that transaction contains the data that you've asked for to put on chain. You have now the luxury of bundling that transaction in the same block as your own app transaction. So you get access to that data one block before everybody else. Once it goes on chain, it becomes a reference input. It's available to everybody else after that. But you may have the business advantage to pay for it first. So that's the business model. And that, again, we're starting very slow. We're subsidizing our feeds. Thank you. We're subsidizing our feeds to start with. But we're already getting knocks on the door from projects that have very unique feed needs, and we're like, great, if we can make this work, if we can make it, if the cost to produce that feed is something you're willing to pay, then you're going to be paying for that in FACT token and using this on-demand feature. So that's the first utility.
Love
that.
Yeah. I love that a lot, and I never knew that. Like, are other oracles like that, where if you pay for the information and the feed, you get it the block before the public, basically, to do whatever business?
I don't know. I think that's unique in our what we call in the Cardano Open Oracle protocol. That's part of that design. And again, it's something. Yeah, I thank you. I think, and again, that's something that we can do because we are in the UXO model where
right, because it doesn't go.
Exactly, and then we're transaction based, so you can introduce anybody can induce a signed transaction into their. Anyway, it's made possible because of the Cardano model. But to be clear, other oracles have been using essentially this feature, but they usually rely on off-chain agreements or contracts to say, hey, you want to use access to Oracle feed? Here's an API security key, and here's the bank account where we want to receive your 10 grand a month to use this fee. That's how most oracles work. Not very decentralized, right? So we want to move all of that on chain, have zero off-chain contracts and agreements to use Oracle feeds, and also serve a public good. Like, the idea is that if a protocol does have the money to pay for that transaction, great. But then downstream as reference inputs, everybody else gets it for free after that, and it is a public good. And this very much ties back into my technical team's background working in the digital archive space. We maintain archives as a public good. It's the society's memory, and again, we think by delivering an archival science-based Oracle platform, we think we can actually improve upon digital archiving platforms altogether. So this DeFi Oracle thing is something that can actually contribute back to decentralized digital archiving space as well. If there's a revenue stream there, if it can pay for itself, the technology we're building benefits many, many people. And this comes from that open source mindset. As long as you can find somebody to pay for a feature or a bounty, that, and then everybody else should benefit from that work and resources downstream. That's very much fits our philosophy and how we designed the protocol.
This is amazing stuff, and I wish I could stream up the but wait, there's more, because you said that was just the beginning of the utility.
Yeah, well, so when you asked what's the utility of the token, that's the first one, is to pay for the on-demand feeds. The second one is for staking and rewarding. So like in the validator pool network, we will arrive at a certain amount. I mean, people are already asking us what's that amount going to be, but this is the whole point of running our incentivized testnet network, also to test the tokenomics, to incentivize incentive structure to see what people will respond to. Again, with the goal to make the validator pool as widely deployed as possible. We need to reduce the technical complications. We need to reduce the financial commitment. So we want to keep the amount that people have to stake to participate as a validator node operator really low, but it still has to be high enough that, if people are misbehaving, that when you get slashed, that is a significant enough punishment. So that's a formula that we'll work on. But so staking, participating as a validator network and validator node in the network, and then being rewarded for being a good validator node, you will get rewarded in FACT tokens. So that's the third utility. And then lastly, we're at the final stage where governance to a decentralized autonomous organization. We anticipate there'll be some using FACT as stake-based voting in that DAO governance model. But that's 2-3 years down the road at best, and we will very much be like working in parallel with the Cardano governance kind of technology and infrastructure and methodologies that have been that we're all working on together as a community. We definitely think it'll be very much aligned with that. But we've got obviously still lots of network deployment and feeds and things to get up first as a tech team before we transition to that.
Absolutely. So getting into kind of what's been going on in the past week in the mainnet launch, what have you guys been able to launch? What are you so excited about to kind of bring to market?
Yeah, I mean, if you click on Explore in the top right-hand corner, that gives us a little visual to look at. And so this is the live Explorer that's right now, as you click on that, it's going to go to Arweave, search for all the archival packages that we've put on the network via OrcFax. Is that not loading for you?
Oh, I clicked it. Actually, this is because it's another tab. I just need to change tabs.
Oh, there we go. That's what it was. But it gives us a good visual to talk about what we're doing. So yeah, what we've launched is we have one active feed, as you see in the top right there, and that's our ADA USD feed. Another price cost-cutting measure that we've developed is that we publish the inverse of every price feed in the same datum, so that you don't have to do the conversion in your own smart contract on chain or off chain. So you get ADA USD and you get USD ADA in the same feed. And so likewise, soon we'll be offering BTC and euros, ADA vice versa as a double feed like that. So all our price feeds are doubled. And so if you see the most recent fact there, click on that card, the price of ADA. So that's the fact statement. Like that's a human readable fact statement that says the price of one ADA was 2.6 USD on that date, right? And that's a simple fact statement. Ideally, you could think of other fact statements like the score of Manchester United versus Chelsea was 3-2 on this date, right? The weather in Nairobi on October 5th at 12 p.m. UTC, the temperature was X, right? These are all statements about a fact about the real world. In this case, it's a statement of fact about the price of ADA in USD. And so if you scroll down to the Archive Explorer and click on the one that says fact statement datum, yeah, so that's what you're looking at now is the actual snippet of JSON. So JSON is a very commonly used data format in the Web2 space to exchange information between systems. And that's what we've standardized on for all our archival packages as well. So this little snippet of fact statement is what actually gets serialized into concise binary object representation, the CBOR that's used on Cardano. So OrcFax turns this into CBOR, and you'll see there the actual value, the fourth key down values. That's the inverse there, ADA to USD and USD ADA. So that's the price point that a smart contract will actually look for in the CBOR, pick up and use in their smart contract. But then further below, you'll see at the very bottom, you'll see property ID Arclay identifier. So that's a hash that then links back out. So now if you go back to the left-hand side and look at fact statement ADA USD at the very just above there, this is the full fact human readable fact statement. So this is where we've gathered all the data, and the datum snippet that goes on chain resolves back out to this much larger human and machine readable fact statement, because it's marked up not just in JSON, it's marked up as JSON linked data, which makes it reusable, machine readable, and we use a very commonly used ontology called schema.org, which basically makes these data packages highly reusable in the outside of the blockchain space, outside of OrcFax, outside of Cardano. And this is what I was talking about earlier, but we're creating a data lake of facts that happen to be anchored and authenticated in the Cardano blockchain, because we've got this link back to a transaction datum. And this is a very good example of what we call the archival bond, where you're able to follow one record to the next. And again, this is what's just a very simple thing that's been missing so far in the Oracle space. And so if you see there, the fact statement is saying we're using schema.org claim ontology. So people doing fact checking online have created ontologies for how to verify claims about the world. And so Oracle is reporting claims about the real world. And so some of that metadata includes like, what's this based on? Where did this fact statement come from? So you'll see there, it's got a link to the message ADA USD Kraken collector. And that's, if you go back to the left-hand pane, you can click on that, any one of those three. So that's the original API response. So this is the actual, the raw HTTP API request as it was returned by Kraken. By Kraken. And then the one above it is Coinbase. The one below it was KuCoin.
And this is using that triangulation you're talking about. You're using Coinbase, Kraken, and KuCoin to then...
Correct. So you can see exactly what they replied to us. And then if you go one record below that, you see validation. And so that's where the validator, the logic kicks in and says, now we compare all these. So it runs a mean average calculation. I believe it says that somewhere below there. So it's basically saying we gathered all this data, and this is the end. After we ran it through our validator pool, this is the result that we have, and we validated this to be correct because we see no anomalies, no outliers in the data collection. And then we can produce the fact statement. So that's so again, when people think of an Oracle, they think of that little price point, that 0.261 on chain, right? But that's meaningless from an archival point of perspective, unless you add this kind of contextual metadata to it, right? And in my opinion, it's not trustworthy enough. It's not, And so this is really the value add that we're trying to add to the Oracle space, and ideally raise the bar a bit for expectations, not just in the Cardano space, but in the blockchain space in general, of what Oracle should be able to do.
Yeah, this is really, really cool. And so would you want to have like more than a triangulation of 3 here? Like, say, what would happen? And this is just me if Kraken goes down, then we're down, right? So you want to have like 4 or 5 in here so that somebody can kind of get knocked out and the whole system still operates. And then now DeFi, and now everything like a DeFi program on chain, like an on-chain smart contract, can pull this information from you, know that it's decentralized and validated information, and that's how pricing's done on like a DEX per se.
Yeah. Again, I won't name names, but you can go down the list of the top 20 protocols right now and ask them where they're getting their external data from. And again, this is about raising the bar.
Name some names.
No, I'm not gonna, because everybody's working hard and everybody's doing their best. And what we're introducing is a new capability to make our platform even better, to make Cardano even stronger and more decentralized. And we want to partner with those protocols and platforms, and again, give them the cheapest, easiest way to integrate decentralized Oracle feeds to raise the bar yet again for Cardano DeFi as a whole.
And this seems like a really amazing like foundation here. Like you're starting with this simple price feed, ADA to USD, but this can go so much further and bringing in more information and things like that. Where do you see this kind of going in your imagination?
There's a variety of ways. I mean, the most obvious one next after price feed data, right? Like, so right now we're reporting, and just to your point earlier, yes, we have a minimum of 3 right now. It's a bare minimum. And so right now we consider 2 out of 3 valid. So if there's an anomaly with 1, but the other 2 is still reporting, so we're using 3 as a bare minimum. This is why triangulation is important. If one reports something and the other 2 seeing the same thing, if all 3 aren't seeing the same thing, maybe there's a problem. So that is the bare, but you're 100% right. And we are starting simple. Obviously, this is going to be something that evolves over time. We'll have more data collection points, and then obviously we'll have many more collector validator nodes as well. But that is 100% the intent, is to increase the primary sources. Where this is going, I think the most obvious one that people think of next after centralized price exchanges is also decentralized price exchanges, by the way. So like getting really accurate, up-to-date Cardano native token price information is also something that we've been relying on individual DEXs, or there's a few other gatherers. Actually, Tap Tools does a great job. I'll throw that name out there. I think that's a great platform. So but that's one of the only places you can get kind of this aggregated view of what a current price is. And think we can improve upon that as well, and use our decentralized collection triangulation policy model to like read directly from each node, reading directly on chain per transaction and reporting that back to our Oracle. That's going to be another feature that we want to add. So Cardano native tokens are different from centralized exchange tokens, where you can get an API from a centralized exchange, right? That information is easier to get. But where we think all of this is going, it already is. It's like sports betting and fantasy leagues is another really big one, and online gaming, for example, and even like cross-chain, like NFT gaming and those kind of things. But very basically, betting apps is a really simple example. Like I gave you that example earlier. Like, what's the score, right? So you got a betting app that's sitting there waiting for somebody to come and say the game's over and this was the final score. Again, where are those scores coming from right now? Usually it's getting repurposed from Opta, which is a big sports data gatherer in soccer, for example, and then comes through Chainlink, and then it goes, but quite often it's a single source, right? And this is where we keep coming back to, like, where is the source of your data? Is it coming from more than one source? So sports betting, fantasy leagues, we see a future in that, but also we see ways of improving upon the triangulation and data collection of that, where at some point we may include human agents. If there's 3 or 4 more people sitting with a trusted smartphone app that you can certify and timestamp the location and time, and they all take a picture of the scoreboard, that's a different way to collect the same data, right, that you might be getting from an API otherwise, or paying for through an API. So sports and fantasy leagues are a big thing. The other one that's really interesting for oracles is insurance. So it's particularly crop insurance is a really interesting one, where, for example, farmers can sometimes have to wait a long, let the fields get flooded, and they have this happened here last year in the Vancouver region here, and they had to wait for months for the adjuster to finally, say, here you go, yes, your field's flooded, here's the money for you to go rebuild and so forth. Whereas we starting to see like on-chain insurance claims where there's an external oracle monitoring for extraordinary weather events, like extreme weather events, happening within a particular geographical polygon. If you happen to have a policy in that polygon and the weather event came in and hit that, yes, we know your land is flooded, the claim will automatically pay. So that's another good example where you decentralize the insurance industry and function. And that's also going to be very reliant on authentic, accurate data coming in from the outside world. And
only problem I see there is insurances always hate to pay out.
I know. So, but that's the thing. That's the insurance companies. They're
going to be forced to.
It's like the house always wins, right? With insurance too. So, but this is decentralizing the insurance function. It's putting it on chain into a deterministic smart contract where the rules are sitting there. Like, this is the policy. These are the rules. If this data comes in, you will get paid automatically right away. I mean, that's revolutionary, right? That's a good example right there. But
Absolutely.
There's the list goes on, because we've got supply chain. Like, did this cotton arrive in this factory at this point in time? Did it get turned into a T-shirt? Did it get shipped there? All these things are happening in the real world. That again, we need real world verification. And Oracle, we're already starting to see people introducing things like scanning like barcodes at different places and putting that transaction on the blockchain. But it's still, in my opinion, not going far enough to solve the Oracle problem. How can you verify something really happening in real world? So we see ourselves applying this triangulation problem to that space. There's things like, tree planting verification. There's all these, if you could think about a large number of real world use cases that have been introduced, like people are saying we should use blockchain for this, they all actually most of them involve an Oracle component somewhere, something that says, is this really happening in the real world? Can we trust this information to be real when we put it on chain? And so, yeah, the list goes on and on. But the other thing that I find really intriguing is that I've spent a lot of time researching AI in the last couple of years as well, and doing some R&D in that space. And a lot of people that have this, we had this kind of fear around like AI becoming Skynet and ruling us all, and like, how can we fight disinformation and deep fakes and all these other things? And there's like the tech solution, which is like trying to figure out how to neutralize AI. And then there's a very simple human agent centered solution, which is like, can we just trust human agents? Are you a self-sovereign ID? Do you have a soul-bound ID? Are you really Peter? Are you really Rand? And if so, then can we trust you to verify that something is happening around you right now? Can you input some information? So I think the counter to AI is going to be like some kind of incentivized kind of data gathering, fact gathering kind of functionality from human agents. By that I simply mean humans with smartphone apps that have good firmware certification to timestamp location and time. So I actually see like blockchain-based oracles as potentially being a counterweight to the runaway toxic AI. So there's, because I think the real world's going to get really interesting, including like, if people, I don't know if is the metaverse still a thing? If people start living there, they're still going to need to have good information about what's happening in the real world, right? So while they're plugged into the matrix,
that's a really good point. Right? Yeah, that's a very good point. Somebody's gonna, you're gonna need to get that data from the real world into the matrix, into the metaverse.
So a Sybil-resistant decentralized network, again, coming back to this idea of solving the Byzantine consensus generals problem, that actual technology that we can use now to, like, as a collective, as a human collective, to say, we believe this to be true, and which is like, yes, your wallet has ADA, and you sent it to Peter's wallet. That's all blockchain's doing right now. Yes, that's true. Great, check. Right? It has so much more potential, and oracles really are, in my opinion, one of the key missing pieces to that puzzle.
Really, this has been a fascinating one. Before we go, kind of like, what's the future in the next 6 months for you guys? What are you working on now that you've got the mainnet launch? Is it customers to kind of work with the price feeds and DeFi? What's kind of the next step for you guys?
Yeah, that's exactly it. So first of all, we're going to add BTC and Euro as free sponsored ADA feeds as well, adding them to the mix here, so that we're pushing that out. the next big step for us is the incentivized test network, and so that will launch in November, and we will have several rounds of that there to test out the validator technology, also test out the economic incentives. What are the right numbers to use, figures to use for staking and rewarding? So that is going to be, again, it's still very much a heavy R&D focus. We're trying to make sure we manage expectations for what we're able to offer when, but we'll have free subsidized hourly heartbeat, 1% deviation heartbeats going for the next 12 months. And then, so the other focus while our dev shop is working on that end of things, our business development team has been talking to lots of protocols and projects to gather their requirements, to give us really empirical information on what's needed out there. Where's the market for the next type of data feed that we're going to offer. So, we have ideas, like I've thrown around some ideas around, supply chain verification, sports score results. Those are things that we want to look at, but we actually want to be driven by Cardano protocols and dApps coming to us saying, we need this feed, we need that feed. So that's the other business phase we're in now, is that we've had some really great preliminary discussions over the last 6 months with projects that understand the need for decentralized Oracle feeds, want to use our feeds, that we're now revisiting those discussions with, including some that we've been working very closely with that have been doing a detailed evaluation of our technical architecture. And so, yeah, so we kind of parallel stream, keep R&Ding, get this thing to the point where we can go from, like you rightly pointed out, like a federated network that has X number of sources, X number of collector nodes, to one that's fully decentralized, ideally hundreds of nodes, multiple collection points per data feed. That's our end goal. And that's all intended to happen over the next 12 months. We've got a roadmap. If you go to orcfax.io, go to our docs. There is a roadmap page as well, that has just put this against the calendar, like these phases that I'm talking about. But yeah, that's all intended to happen over the next 12 months. So we have a lot of work ahead of us. We're, again, very fortunate that our token launch has gone very well. So we have a bit of runway. We have a great team to execute, and we'll be adding to that team. So we feel pretty confident. It's a very ambitious roadmap, but we're pretty excited about it, because to get all the good stuff that we were talking about today, we gotta keep moving.
I love that. OrcFax.io to see all of this, to see the documents, to go through the Explorer, to read a little bit more about Peter and the team and everything like that. It's actually a very detailed website. I was reading through it before we came on the podcast, and I actually really love all the information you guys have put out. It's really concise. You guys have done a great job with this. Where else can people follow you or communicate with you guys, if they want to kind of get more information? Is it Twitter? Is it Discord?
It's both of those. Spot? Yeah, Twitter. Yeah, Discord. We have a pretty active, lively community in Discord. And so that's the best. And there's just links to it from the orcfax.io page at the very bottom in the footer. Some links to our Discord server. And then Twitter is the other main way that we communicate with the community. And we're just starting to get working on getting a Reddit presence going as well, so we can do some more detailed Q&A in there. There it is. Perfect. Yeah. And then, yeah, we publish monthly updates to Medium and other articles, ad hoc articles as we go. So that's it right there. Just come to our website and check our socials.
I really appreciate the time, Peter. Definitely want to do this again when we have some more time. And as you guys are kind of shipping some more things, it's really amazing to see an Oracle really start to ship on Cardano and price feeds going up and you guys hitting mainnet. Congratulations on that. It's a really big step in the community, and we really, really, really appreciate everything you guys are doing. Any final words before we let it go?
No, I just thank you for this opportunity. And just as you're saying that, I just love I do love the Cardano community. I think we're all very supportive and business-like and professional with each other. And I just, even in this bear market right now, there's still lots of builders like us with our heads down that are excited about the future of Cardano, including you guys with Rare Evo, putting the word out and giving us all the platform. So thanks for that. And I'm just happy to be here. And thanks for the opportunity to share our work.
Thanks, Peter.